I love sports. Well, I used to, anyways. Sure, I'll still watch a basketball game, a football game, or even the football game every now and then if the matchup is good enough, but I've always felt a disconnect in my interests regarding them. Like there is something missing for me. I'll try to explain. When I say that I love sports, I only really love watching them. As a participant, I was usually far less enthused. That's not to say I didn't try them though. Far from it, in fact. I tried a few. I flamed out of most of them pretty quickly though. Soccer was first, and I was so young at the time that I barely even remember any of my time playing. But seeing as how I was running around chasing a ball at an age where I, 1, couldn't tie my shoelaces properly, and 2, couldn't keep myself from tripping over those same shoelaces, all while getting kicked in the shins by a bunch of other snot-nosed kids who couldn't hit the ball while standing still, it's no surprise I chose not to stick with it. Basketball was next, and I even found it pretty fun for a while, until I went from being the tallest kid on the team to the shortest kid on the team in a matter of about 2 years. Turns out trying to be a power forward when you're only 5'9" doesn't work out too well. Who knew? Then there was football, which was an experience to say the least. I was never that good at football. I understood all the concepts, plays, and had a general idea of what I was supposed to be doing on a given play. But when it came down to it, I just wasn't willing to run headfirst into a guy who was also running headfirst into me, just so I could keep him from getting a first down or whatever, and then do it all again on the next play. My friend who went on to play college football told me that in order to be good, you have to not care about what happens to your body, which...
Listen. That's football.
Yeah, no thanks. Seeing as how I plan on using this body for the rest of my life, I can't help but care what happens to it, you know? Oddly enough, the one sport that I did manage to stick with long-term was lacrosse, which I played through college with my school's club team. I even did so as the goalie, which if you know anything about the sport, you know that means that I was subject to my fair share of bumps and bruises. This led to a lot of questions along the lines of, well, if you don't play football because you're scared of getting hurt, why would you play a position where you get hurt every game? And I always had to say I wasn't scared of getting hurt, I was afraid of getting injured, which is a pretty big difference. A couple of bumps and bruises aren't anything I can't handle, but concussions on the other hand, I had no interest in. Despite my general disinterest in participating in these sports, there's one aspect I couldn't keep myself away from: the video games. NCAA football, FIFA, 2K, Madden, NHL, UFC, heck, even the PGA Tour games. It didn't matter which one it was. If I was able to get my hands on it, I played it, learned it, and I wanted to be the best one out of all my friends at it. And it was a love for these games that I mistook as a love for the sports they were emulating. So whenever I watched the sport on TV, I enjoyed it a little bit, but that same disconnect was still there. Why didn't the sport I was watching on TV resonate with me the same way it did when I was playing it on my Xbox? I couldn't put my finger on it. Until one day in the summer of 2015. One day that summer, I go over to a friend's house, look at the TV, and see a bunch of cars running into each other and a giant soccer ball. He tells me they're playing a game that just came out called Rocket League and they hand me a controller. After a brief explanation of the controls, they start the game and tell me to figure the rest out on my own. I couldn't even get a touch on the ball, let alone score a goal, and my car was getting blown up every 10 seconds, and I was having more fun on this game than I had had in any game before. Each time I accomplished something, even if something little is not completely whiffing when I tried to hit the ball, it felt rewarding and it made me want to see what else I could accomplish. Score a goal, get my car up in the air, anything, everything. Obviously I wanted to buy the game myself, but unfortunately I had an Xbox, and the game was only on PC and PS4. So to make up for my inability to play consistently, I would watch clips of it on YouTube whenever I could. After watching who knows how many videos, I kept seeing people link their Twitch channel, which I'd never heard of. So I decided to go check it out, and holy crap was I missing out. This place was like video game heaven. You had some of the best players in the world just playing their game and talking to the people who were watching directly. And the chat was using so many different emotes, they might as well have been speaking a different language. It immediately became my second favorite website. Behind YouTube, of course. I would usually log in once a day just to see who was playing and to meet new people who had the same interest in this crazy car-flying soccer game that I did. Then I ran into a stream where everything just clicked for me. I found a Twitch channel called Rocket League Central, and they were hosting a tournament called the RLC Pro League. And seeing as how the only time I had seen the word professional attached to a video game were when my classmates in high school were bragging about how they were MLG and Halo, which they weren't, I decided to tune in and see what this was all about. I was fixated on the screen from beginning to end, focusing on every detail. Where the players were positioning their cars, how they hit the ball, everything. And keep in mind, this was still before I could play the game. From that point on, I was watching Rocket League tournaments whenever I heard about one. And when it finally came to Xbox, I bought it immediately and tried to implement everything that I had learned from all those Twitch streams and YouTube videos. And yeah, let's just say I wasn't quite as good as all the people I had been watching. But at that point, I didn't even care. The love for the game was already there, and it didn't seem like it was going to go away anytime soon. If anything, I'd say that it's grown as I've added more games to my library over the years. I've been playing Overwatch since the open beta and have been following the Overwatch League ever since they announced it. And I was actually introduced to Rainbow Six Siege through their Pro League and bought the game afterwards. I even started learning about some esports that had been around for a while and that I didn't know too much about, like StarCraft, League of Legends, and CSGO. So some months passed and my brother walked in while I was watching yet another Rocket League tournament, and he said to me, "You watch this stuff like it's football or something." And I realized something. The stuff was similar to basketball or football, or any sport for that matter. There's a team-based competition depending on the skill and coordination of the respective teams. But it just felt different. It felt better, honestly. And the more I thought about the reasons why, it became obvious. Like, first of all, anything that I see done in an esport, I can go home and try to replicate it myself, no matter how insanely difficult it may be. I see Squishy hit a ridiculous flip reset shot, I go into free play and try it myself. I see Carpe click heads to clutch out a point, I go into the practice range or quick play to see what I can do. Point being, there's nothing stopping me from going out and replicating what I saw them do besides my own skill. And even then, there's nothing to stop me from practicing to increase my skill to that point. Now keep in mind that it's still insanely difficult and I might not be able to pull it off for months, or maybe even ever in some cases, but at least I still have a chance. That mindset can only take you so far in traditional sports, and the biggest perpetrator of them all is basketball. Yeah, I can watch Kyrie pull off ridiculous dribble moves and then go into my driveway and try to pull them off myself. I can even watch Steph Curry make a bunch of ridiculous threes and try to do the same. But then I'll watch Giannis Antetokounmpo dribble halfway across the court in 4 steps and dunk over everybody. And yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that. Like, ever. It doesn't matter how much I practice or how much physical training I go through. I just can't do that because he's a 7-foot athletic freak and I'm not. Heck, even Kyrie and Steph are 6'3", which isn't absurdly tall, but it's still taller than most of us. And sure, that might not matter that much for me because I never had NBA aspirations in the first place, but there's some people out there who that difference is devastating for. Imagine spending all of your childhood following a passion for basketball or any sport, but since you weren't big enough or tall enough, you end up falling short of your goal. That has to be a pretty bad feeling. And heck, sometimes the opposite is true. Like for Anthony Davis. Started out his second year of high school at 6'2" and only had one college offer from a mid-level school. By the end of his third year, he's 6'10" and has an offer to Kentucky and is already getting looked at by the NBA. While that's really cool for Anthony, he's the rare exception to an extremely common rule, and I'd rather not have my ability to pursue my passion determined by biological RNG. Well, that's not something you need to worry about with esports. You could be 5 feet, 7 feet, weigh 90 pounds, 300 pounds. You could even be a paraplegic and have the same chance as everybody else. Because the only physics that matter are the physics of the game. And when we're all in the same game, we're all able to do the same things. And we all have a fair chance. And that's pretty cool if you ask me. And speaking of physics, when an object has too much force exerted on it, it breaks. And injuries. That's what I'm getting at, injuries. They suck. A lot. My brother was pretty good at football in high school. Unfortunately, thanks to a sprained ankle, a dislocated shoulder, and a concussion, he hardly got the chance to play any. The same sad story is true for a bunch of professional and hopeful professional athletes who get their career derailed and sometimes even ended by injuries. Derrick Rose, Bell Jackson, Ryan Shazier, Kevin Everett, the list goes on. While catastrophic injuries never happen in esports, injuries coming from prolonged stress are somewhat common. These mostly come in the form of hand and wrist injuries, such as carpal tunnel and gamer's thumb, which isn't as cool as it sounds, unfortunately. In rare cases, a player may even need to get surgery and sit out for a while. However, as esports organizations become more aware of the risk, they also become more aware of the preventative measures that can be taken to avoid these risks altogether. Teams are even starting to hire trainers to monitor a player's health and prevent injuries before they even occur. And there's one more aspect where esports definitely trump physical sports. When I was watching Overwatch Apex League back in the day and they kept talking about a player named Geggery, I didn't think twice about it until they used the pronoun she when referring to her. And I realized that I completely disregarded the possibility of women being able to compete with men on the same competitive stage and not be held back by moral biological RNG in the form of their birth gender. There's no need for a women's LCS or a women's Overwatch League. Everyone can play in the original, which is pretty great. There are still some esports tournaments that are hosted for women only, but at least those leagues serve as just one option for many gamer girls instead of the only chance they have at a competitive scene. Despite everything though, you know the best part about esports is how easy it is to get into yourself. You just start playing a game that looks cool to you, then go to Twitch or YouTube, like I did, to learn more about it, maybe even watch a tournament or two. Eventually you'll find a player that you like, and congratulations, you now have a team to root for. And just like that, you're part of the most eccentric, exciting, and fastest growing community you could find anywhere. So, I love esports. I still love esports, and in all likelihood, I'll always love esports. And I'm willing to bet that if you gave it an honest chance, you would too. Thanks for watching.